Next on Arizona 360, the effects of raising minimum wage on the state's economy.
We don't want to encourage somebody to be in a minimum wage job and stay there and make a career out of it.
Plus, a multi-million-dollar contract proposed for Arizona's new football coach.
Arizona couldn't have got Kevin Sumlin unless they paid $5 million a year.
And two former opponents try to give voters a more clear look at campaign spending.
It's legal money laundering, but it's still money laundering.
Transparency's always going to be better.
Hello and welcome to Arizona 360. I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thank you for joining us. Most Arizonans earning minimum wage got a raise this month, up to $10.50 an hour. It's a 50-cent increase from last year. That amounts to an additional $1,040 a year for full-time employees. You'll remember voters passed Prop 206 in 2016, also called the Fair Wages and Healthy Families Act. Under the law, Arizona's minimum wage will gradually rise to $12 an hour by 2020. It also requires employers to offer paid sick time. Raising minimum wage remains a controversial topic. Helping us understand the law's effect on businesses in Arizona, so far, economist Jim Rounds in Phoenix.
What happens on these economic adjustments is you never see anything impact the broader economy right away. So when the minimum wage goes into effect, of course, individuals are making more money. Businesses have less money. You have a lot of adjustments going on. So people are trying to make the case that we still have employment growth that's decent. We're still a leader in the country, top 10, top 5, depending on the economic statistic. And so minimum wage has had no negative impact, but that's not really how you have to look at it. You have to try to figure out where we would have been, and then if it has had a negative impact, and it will eventually. But I don't think it's something where it's going to derail economic growth because too many things influence economic growth.
Is there a timeline of when you think that we might actually start to see some sort of effect?
The rule of thumb would be anything major like this, and I feel strongly about it with minimum wage, you're really not going to see the big impacts until at least a year passes, maybe 2. That's when the economy kind of filters everything that's happening. However, you will see some businesses close their doors because they were small, they had smaller volume, they couldn't afford to pay people that much more. They already had people that were making a lot less, so it would have been a bigger % increase in their payroll. So you've seen some businesses close their doors, and they've even been public about arguing why. However, in the aggregate in our broader economy, you're going to see more of an impact as time goes by. And based on economic theory, it'll be a negative impact. But what I would like to see, though, is the state doing a better job, say, with workforce training. We don't want to encourage somebody to be in a minimum wage job and stay there and make a career out of it. We want to have them have that minimum wage job while they're getting trained to be a manager. And then when they're a manager at that place, getting trained to be a supervisor at a bigger company or whatever it might be, or start their own business. We have to work more holistically and not just focus on the minimum wage. When I was doing some of the debates during the minimum wage period, when the public was deciding how they wanted to vote, nobody was talking about these alternatives. This was promoted at a very superficial level. A lot of the analyses were bad. I think we can do better in Arizona, and I hope we do.
Now we head to Flagstaff, which has the highest cost of living in Arizona. To address that, the city raised its minimum wage at a rate faster than the rest of Arizona. Vanessa Barchfield reports on how the move divided the mountain town.
It's a pretty standard day for business at Proper, a craft butcher and sandwich shop on Flagstaff's south side. Meat's being sliced, bread's on the grill, and customers stream in. The employees here stay busy, and for their work, they earn tips plus $11 an hour. That's Flagstaff's minimum wage. What they'll earn in the next few years, though, is not so clear. Minimum wage has been a contentious issue in Flagstaff for a while now. It all started in 2016 when voters were asked to decide on Proposition 414. The measure would raise Flagstaff's minimum wage to $15 an hour by the year 2022. Joe Bader worked on the campaign. He says there was a lot of momentum around the country at the time to hike wages.
Looking at the data in Flagstaff, the poverty data, there's a very high level of poverty and low-wage jobs here, and so we thought that this is an issue whose time has come.
And Flagstaff voters agreed that the city needed a raise. Proposition 414 passed with almost 54% of the vote. The Greater Flagstaff Chamber of Commerce opposed the measure. CEO Julie Pastrick says the reaction among the business community was shock.
Our phones started ringing off the hook almost immediately by businesses saying, you have to help us, please help us. A, we don't understand. Can we actually live under the law of two wages? B, how is this going to affect us? When does it go into place? And C, I can't afford this. I'm going to have to lay off workers. I'm going to have to raise prices. What does this mean for me?
The overall social benefit to this community of raising the minimum wage, which will positively benefit over 20,000 people in this town that make under $15 an hour, is the real story here.
There are a few things you need to know about the law. One is that in the same election, Arizona voters also passed a measure to hike the state minimum wage to $12 an hour by 2020.
It's almost like a double effect because the state wage at $12 also includes paid time off. And paid time off is something new to most employers. Some employers have sick time, but the paid time off is mandated as well. And it's for any and every employee, even if you only work 1 hour.
Also, the Flagstaff law mandated that its minimum wage be $2 higher than the state wage, which increased to $10 an hour last summer.
So we were looking at our small businesses having to go from $8.05 an hour with the minimum wage to $12 as a minimum wage within 6 months.
That wasn't actually going to be that big a deal, we thought.
But the city council disagreed. It stepped in last year to tweak the law. The city council removed the mandate that the Flagstaff minimum wage be $2 an hour higher than the state's. They slowed down implementation of the wage increase, but also ultimately raised the final minimum wage from $15 to $15.50 an hour.
I think for the most part, the business community across the board was totally disappointed that the city council would approve an extra 50 cents on top of what the voters legally approved.
Today, Flagstaff's minimum wage stands at $11 an hour. And Paul Moyer, the owner of Proper, says businesses are feeling the impact of those hikes already.
I mean, obviously it has increased our costs of labor in town, and that has also carried over into some of the cost of goods. Our vendor prices, things like that, have gone up as well. So, you know, we've seen an impact. It hasn't been, I don't think it's been quite as big as people were thinking originally, and there was a lot of fear when it first passed that, you know, businesses were going to be going out left and right. That hasn't, I don't think that's come to fruition quite yet.
There's no dispute that prices in this already expensive town are going up. What that means for Flagstaff is very different based on whom you're talking to.
I've been in rooms with businesses that are looking at Flagstaff or thinking about coming here from other communities or other states, and you might as well just throw competitiveness out the window.
Well, I have two responses. One, all you have to do is walk around town and look at the new restaurants and businesses that have opened, all after the minimum wage passed or slightly before it when people assumed it was going to pass. So, and that's consistent with decades of historical data that show that when the minimum wage is raised, there is little to no impact on employment, despite the claims of the chamber and some of the conservative elements of the business community.
It's important to note here that the Flagstaff business community and economy are dominated by small local companies.
Small businesses make up about 80% of our local economy, if not a little higher.
A lot of these small businesses belong to the Chamber of Commerce and strongly oppose the measure. But Bader says many businesses are ardent supporters of the higher minimum wage, and he's not worried about what impact it'll have on any of them.
They all will figure out how to adjust and to make money and make a profit. I mean, this is always a challenge for business in particular, small business, is to figure out how to operate in whatever environment they happen to be in. And if they have to pay a certain wage, then they figure out how to pay a certain wage.
What is clear is that the issue has driven a wedge through the town.
When you have community members and even, you know, people that are on either side of this talking about boycotting local businesses, I mean, that does huge damage to a community like Flagstaff that really is built on this idea of community and this local flavor of the town.
And as Flagstaff tries to move forward, the issue is not over yet. The Chamber of Commerce got its Sustainable Wages Act on this November's ballot. The measure would bring Flagstaff's minimum wage down from $15.50 an hour to just $12.50 an hour. That'd be just 50 cents higher than the state's wage. Mayor Evans says she supports the measure, at least as a stopgap.
I think that would make us more competitive as a city. I would like to see us then work together to really find out what is the appropriate minimum wage for our city. Is it $15.50 an hour? Is it $14 an hour? Is it something in between? I'd like to have more of a comprehensive conversation where you bring business owners and minimum wage workers together, nonprofits and leaders, to really have a conversation.
Whatever the minimum wage turns out to be, business owner Paul Moyer is taking a pragmatic approach.
We've largely not taken a stand on it, and we've just tried to figure out internally how we're going to adjust for it and work with the laws that got voted in.
All right, photographers.
To take over Arizona's football program, the U of A wants to pay new head coach Kevin Sumlin $14.5 million spread across the next 5 years. The final contract would need approval from the Arizona Board of Regents. The Regents called for a review of multi-year athletic coach contracts after the U of A fired former head football coach Rich Rodriguez and agreed to honor the terms of his contract, worth more than $5 million. All that after allegations that he sexually harassed a former employee. Rodriguez denies those allegations. Greg Hansen has followed this story closely for the Arizona Daily Star.
There are only high-dollar contracts now in college football. In the Pac-12, this is mid-level. What Kevin Sumlin is getting, which averages out to almost $5 million a year, and it's only going to grow. 5 years from now, it'll be it'll be $5 million more.
At what point is it too much?
That's the best question. Every school in this league now, even the big hitters, Oregon, USC, are running debt service. This is new. When Jim Livengood was the Arizona athletic director, they had no debt service. Now, I mean, they're building $66 million worth of new athletic facilities starting right now. Most of that will be debt service.
University of Arizona Athletics paying Rich Rodriguez and Kevin Sumlin right now. Where is all this money coming from? I mean, it's upwards of almost $20 million.
It's coming from ESPN and Fox. Arizona gets almost $30 million a year for their media rights from those two TV corporations. Without that, the league and any league in college sports wouldn't be able to pay these salaries.
After the Rich Rodriguez scandal broke, the Board of Regents said we've got to take a closer look at some of these high-dollar contracts. Is that likely to actually happen this time around?
They'll take a look at it, but it won't change. I mean, that's the marketplace. Arizona couldn't have got Kevin Sumlin unless it paid $5 million a year. It wouldn't keep Sean Miller unless it paid him $3.5 million a year. And his contract's going to keep going up too. If somebody nibbled on Sean Miller, say Kentucky or somebody, Arizona would have to almost double his salary to keep him.
We heard Dr. Robbins, the new athletic director, Dave Hickey, say yesterday this is about more than football, right? It's academics, it's the environment, the climate of the program.
That responsibility is a big deal. Teaching responsibility, and then owning up to that and being able to handle that is more than just, again, like I said, there's football lessons, but a lot of these lessons are life lessons.
Kevin Sumlin, is he the right guy to actually take Arizona athletics, because it's been very tumultuous times recently?
I think the best word is he's a connector. Rich Rodriguez was not a connector. He was isolated. I think they went after a guy who could connect, and a guy who would be in the community, a guy who would put his arm around somebody, a guy who would bring Chuck Cecil back to town, and hang around with him. You never saw Rich Rodriguez out at the Rotary Club. I think they expect Kevin Sumlin to at least engage community people.
Greg Byrne was a longtime athletic director where a lot of these things, many might say, were taking place. Is he at fault in any of these discussions?
The campus Title IX department ordered him not to remain active in investigations into the track coach, into the Elliott Pitts thing with the basketball program. So he stepped away. I don't think he wanted to step away. He's told me he didn't want to step away, but he was ordered not to be involved in those, that the campus would take care of it. And it reflected poorly on him. And then he left at a time when all of this was surfacing. But I got to know him really well over those 6 years, and I think he's a person whose instinct is always to do the right thing.
We've had litigation, an FBI investigation, this coaching scandal with football. Leadership-wise, How will Arizona fare moving out of this?
Fortunately for them, they've got Bobby Robbins and Dave Hickey, both new to the job, with a new approach, and they have been impressive so far. I mean, you can't help but be impressed by the new president. He's out in public. He's involved in every little thing. You hear from him, you know who he is. And Dave Hickey, Greg Byrne was a lot like Bobby Robbins. Hickey's totally different, but he's an engager. You know, he spent 18 years at Oregon when Oregon rose to power. He knows how it works. I think Arizona's got a real chance with those two leaders to make them move forward.
For Arizona and the states that rely heavily on trade with Mexico and Canada, what happens next week in Montreal matters. It's where leaders from all three nations will meet for a sixth round of talks to renegotiate NAFTA. With the treaty's future still uncertain, a recent federal report looked at what's at stake if the U.S. withdrew altogether. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce said scrapping NAFTA would cost Arizona about 235,000 jobs. Its report also found that nearly half of Arizona's exports go to Canada and Mexico, generating more than $10 billion in revenue for the state. And to get a better understanding of what's on the line for Arizona, we're joined by Luis Ramirez, president of Ramirez Advisors, a firm that provides advice to multiple clients on cross-border issues, among them the Arizona-Mexico Commission. Luis, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
Please explain how Arizona and Mexico can continue to have a relationship or agreements in place if NAFTA changes.
Well, everything we're doing from the Arizona perspective is to continue to build and forge a stronger working relationship with Sonora, with Mexico. Even if the free trade agreement was to go away, even if the U.S. decided to pull out, there are a number of provisions, such as the World Trade Organization or WTO provisions, that would oversee and set the limits for how trade would happen between the U.S. and Mexico.
Mexico recently increased its minimum wage, though it's still less than $5 a day. How is this made right? You know, you often hear that the manufacturers have gone that direction south of the border because it's cheaper labor.
You know, again, if a company's simply looking at the number of, how much I paid that employee per hour, it may seem far cheaper. But that's really not the cost of an operation in Mexico, and we help clients assess that. There are a number of benefits that are accrued beyond the wage that is set as the minimum wage. Most companies in the manufacturing sector, those that are involved in export or shipping products in Mexico to do some value add and shipping them back to the U.S. and worldwide, they typically pay multiples of the minimum wage, not the minimum wage itself.
Here in Arizona, we've really expanded our infrastructure to accommodate the growth that we're seeing, cross-border relations. The I-11 corridor, for example, where is that at this point?
I-11 still needs a lot of money, to give you the punchline. But nevertheless, it's an initiative that the Arizona Department of Transportation, Director Halakowski, are continuing to analyze, study. But more importantly, what I like to think about is when the director led a small delegation to Mexico City, when we got there, when we started mentioning I-11, the response we got from the Mexican companies, Mexican government officials, Mexican transportation officials is, when is it going to be done? They recognize the congestion that exists on the California, particularly I-5 and the Pacific coastline. They're looking for alternative routes to get their products to the entire west coast of the United States.
Our ports of entry have also expanded here across the state. Do those stand to change should NAFTA undergo some sort of negative change where we see less?
When it comes to the NAFTA negotiations, really is a federal purview. It is federal government to federal government. Nevertheless, I believe the leadership of people like Governor Ducey and his entire team in putting Arizona in the best position possible. Ports of entry are going to continue to exist whether NAFTA or not. And we have a number of entities and states coming to see what we're doing because Arizona is moving forward with making our border the best that it can be and second to none.
All year, we're focusing on elections as part of our coverage of Your Vote 2018. We're looking at the races and issues you'll be thinking about when you go to the polls. This week, we're taking a closer look at the race for U.S. Senate, especially the Republican primary, which has gained some steam in the last week. Former State Senator Kelly Ward, former Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio, and Congresswoman Martha McSally are vying for the seat currently held by Senator Jeff Flake. And here to discuss what these latest developments mean for Arizona's campaign season, we're joined by the Tucson Weekly's Jim Ninsel and KVOI's Radio Chris DeSimone, host of Wake Up Tucson. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Let's start with you, Chris. You're a morning radio guy. You hear a lot of chatter about what's important to people. When they talk about the Senate race, what are they looking for in their next senator?
Well, some of them, if they lean a little closer to the right, don't want Jeff Flake. And watching the dynamic of these three folks because of Joe Arpaio and Kelly Ward definitely veering harder to the right than Congresswoman McSally, just watching that dynamic and how Martha plays according to how those two do their business is really kind of a fascinating thing to watch.
Well, what you're seeing, I think, is Martha McSally embracing Donald Trump in a way that she hasn't previously. You know, when she ran in 2014 or 2016, she did not endorse Donald Trump. She was asked whether she would vote for Donald Trump. She said she was not going to say whether she would vote for Donald Trump, but when she came out and announced her campaign, she was all in on Trump, saying, you know, she's going to support him. So I think what's happening there is you're seeing Martha recognize that when you go up against Donald Trump, it doesn't end well. You see what happened with Jeff Flake. John McCain tried to challenge Donald Trump, and he has not fared well with that either.
Chris, though, are the same Republicans who voted for Donald Trump aligning themselves or continuing to align themselves with Donald Trump, or have they moved away?
I think some have moved away, probably not as many as you think in the state of Arizona. And I think what Martha is trying to do is she knows she's very good at following the plan. And I think her and her strategy folks have sat down together and said, what is going to get you this primary? And then what is going to set you up where she has to do a little bit of a moderation dance when she gets to Kristen Sinema in the general election.
I think what you're going to see if Kyrsten Sinema comes out is on top in the Democratic primary, which is more than likely at this point, and Martha comes out on top in the Republican primary. Two of the most ambitious political women in the state going up head to head with one another. And this has not been a state that's been kind to Democrats in recent years. You look at the polling right now, it does look like a Democratic wave is forming, but there's a lot of time between now and November, and a lot could happen.
CD2 is about to become very interesting yet again. A lot of different factors make this a race to watch. The Republican primary, though, looking like it might be maybe at this point just Leah Marquez Peterson. Chris?
I think the decks are going to be cleared for Leah by the powers that be. She has close relationship with the governor and his apparatus in Phoenix. You know, Mr. Click and other senior Republicans, that's their candidate. So if someone else wants to run against Leah, they're swimming upstream and they're probably not going to get a lot of money.
And the Democrats, Jim, want this seat very badly. We've already seen a couple names jump in the race, including Dr. Matt Hines, who is saying, why not me? I'm going to try it again.
Matt Hines, who lost badly to Martha McSally last time out. You got Ann Kirkpatrick coming down after losing her Senate race against John McCain and having represented Congressional District 1, which kind of dips into southern Arizona. A lot of Democrats want a piece of this action. I suspect Kirkpatrick is definitely going to lead the race in terms of fundraising and name ID, but again, a lot of surprises in the political arena these days.
Chris, why do you suppose CD2 is so highly sought after?
In the end, every seat more than ever is precious. And we've seen switching from the Democrats to the Republicans on controlling that big honeypot that's called the federal budget and what comes with it is uber important, and that's what both sides are fighting for.
Without a doubt. I mean, this is a district that's 1/3 Republican, 1/3 Democrat, 1/3 independent, roughly speaking. Yep. So it's extraordinarily competitive, and this is a year where the polling, at least at this point, shows Democrats with a huge lead, double-digit lead in the generic ballot, Democrats versus Republicans. How that plays out here remains to be seen. There's that saying, all politics are local, but I think most races are, at least for Congress, are nationalized these days. We'll see who comes out of that Democratic primary and how they match up against, presumably, Leah Marquez Peterson.
The amount of money that's going to get pounded into this race is unbelievable.
Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of TV ads, a lot of mailers, all the rest of that. The candidates will raise a lot of money on their own, but the amount of money coming in from third parties will dwarf that.
For Your Vote 2018, we expect a lot of money flowing into the election. On top of Arizona's congressional races, all state offices, including governor, will appear on the ballot. As Christopher Conover reports, there's a new way to track spending for state races, along with a renewed push to reveal the true source of some donations.
Because it's what's best for Arizona.
Soon, TV and computer screens will be filled with campaign ads, and we know who paid for them.
I approve this message because I've seen what we need to do.
Those dollars are easy to trace. They're on the Secretary of State's website, or for federal candidates, the Federal Election Commission's website. But those sites can be difficult to use, especially if you're trying to cross-reference different campaigns or donors. Enter Secretary of State Michelle Reagan's new website, seethemoney.com.
You don't need to know anything or names. You can get to the same pieces of information through multiple different avenues on See the Money.
The website lets users search a number of categories, beginning with individuals like Governor Doug Ducey. When you click on his name, you can see his donors. You can click on the donors and also see who they gave to. But not all campaign spending is reported. So-called dark money comes from nonprofit groups who are not required to report their donors. The See the Money website tries to shed a little light on those dark groups.
We pull in for the user the IRS 990s of that group. Because remember, these groups have to file somewhere. So where do they file? They file with the IRS. Now, this isn't as detailed of information as some people would like, but it still starts to give you some names and addresses.
Dark money groups should not be confused with political action committees. They do have to report their contributors. The battle against dark money is not easy.
You know, I'm a prosecutor. I used to go after people for money laundering. And this is money laundering. It's legal money laundering, but it's still money laundering. They're trying to keep voters from knowing where the money comes from.
Goddard is backing a constitutional amendment that would outlaw hiding contributors.
And I think we're entitled, I think we have a right as citizens to know who's behind a campaign. And that tells you a lot about why that campaign's being run. Maybe it's a corporate interest that wants to promote a particular policy, and that's why they support this particular person. We need to know that. And maybe we'll be favorable and maybe we won't, but we need to know the facts.
4 years ago, Goddard ran for Secretary of State and was the target of dark money ads.
We don't need Obama's policies. We don't need Terry Goddard.
Most disclosure requires you to say who wrote the last check. Well, in these money laundering schemes, one check goes to another corporation, goes to another one, goes to another one. So the last check is almost irrelevant. What you need to do is to find the person or the corporation that earned the money in the first place. And that's what this initiative proposition would do.
That same year, Michelle Reagan was a state senator campaigning for Secretary of State. She sponsored a bill in the legislature to ban dark money. It was a bipartisan effort. It failed. Since then, as Secretary of State, she has not taken that battle up again.
First of all, the ability to get something like that through the legislature, quite frankly, it's not going to happen. And the second thing is, the way we had it written and the ways that things could have been changed on it, forcing people to disclose things that a federal law says that they don't have to disclose, we ran into it. We had a lot of attorneys in the room trying to let us know if this was constitutional.
That is why Reagan says she hasn't pushed dark money legislation since becoming Secretary of State.
I'm partnering with Michelle Reagan on nothing.
Okay.
Now, if she wants to endorse our proposition, that's fine with me.
Right.
But frankly, I don't think she will. She received dark money in her campaign, and she was the architect of the laws that basically loosened up the provisions that allow these people to do even more.
But the former Attorney General might be surprised to learn Reagan may not be the enemy in the campaign.
So, you know, my philosophy is this. If that gets passed, it's more information for See the Money. Because again, See the Money is as powerful as the information that's being entered into it. So I personally believe that given a choice between transparency, no transparency, transparency's always going to be better.
The See the Money website is still in beta testing, and Goddard's proposal is still collecting signatures.
And that's all for now. If you have any feedback, send us an email, arizona360@azpm.org. Thank you for joining us. See you next week.